Hello everyone, welcome back to another one of my videos. Just after I've finished recording the last video and I uploaded it, my PC broke. I've had it over like 10 years and to be honest I was expecting the processor to go at any minute because it was making weird noises and like I say it's like 10 years old, so I was expecting it to go any minute, but just unfortunate that it went when I just got the SSD card. So I'll be honest, I thought it was the SSD card that had gone. But when I looked at all of the statistics on the motherboard and stuff, it said that the problem was with the computer. So I thought, right, it's time to get a new one. And I was actually talking about getting a new graphics card and stuff in the last video, so it's probably good timing, isn't it, to be honest? Anyway, I've got an absolute beast. And in this video I thought I'll talk about building your own PC and like how to do it and stuff like that. I've documented the whole build. I'm actually on it now, so I know it's working. It's definitely working. What's that smell? Anyway, let's get to it. If you're new here, click like and subscribe. Right, I think the first thing you need to do is pretty much choose what processor you want, because that dictates all of the other parts really. So go online, do a bit of research, find out what processor you want, like Intel or is it AMD, and then you're going to want to choose a motherboard that goes with that processor. And there's different types of sockets for the processor on motherboards, so the one that's in mine is an AM4 socket. So I had to pick a motherboard that had an AM4 socket on. And to be honest, it's quite easy. If you go on like Amazon or something to buy the processor, it comes up with people also bought these parts and it shows you other motherboards that pretty much work with it. Just look them up and do a bit of research and make sure it has that socket on. The same socket as the motherboard. There's I think there's AM2, AM3, AM4, those types of sockets. And that's basically just where you put the processor on the motherboard. Right, so when you pick the motherboard and the processor, you're going to want to select some RAM. Again, you're going to want to pick a RAM that goes with your motherboard, so look up which types of RAM go with this motherboard. And you want to buy them in pairs. So if you want 16 gig RAM, you're going to want to buy 2 sticks of 8 gig. And if you want 8 gigs, you're going to want to buy 2 sticks of 4 gigabytes. The next thing you're going to want is a graphics card. If you're going to be doing anything to do with videos or like video creation or gaming or anything, you're going to want a decent graphics card. Most graphics cards these days run in the PCIe slots on a motherboard, and pretty much every motherboard has those slots now if it's a new motherboard. So they'll pretty much fit in any motherboard, these graphics cards, but just double check just to make sure. The next thing you're going to want is a CD/DVD drive. I mean, these are going out of fashion a bit now, but to install all of the stuff that come with the motherboard, they usually send it on discs. So if you want a CD drive, you're going to want to pick one of them, and any CD drive will fit as long as it's a SATA based. The power supply, and the wattage really depends on what you're going for. If you're going to buy a high-end graphics card, you're probably going to need a lot of watts. The one that I've gone for is 850 watts, and that's enough to power pretty much my PC twice if I need it. These power supplies though only draw the power out when it's needed, so it's not running at 850 watts the entire time. It's probably doing about 400. And the last thing that you're going to want to buy is your PC case. Now, there's 2 sizes of PC cases, and you're going to want to buy one that's the same size as your motherboard. Motherboards come in either ATX, micro ATX, I think there's ITX as well, not quite sure. And so basically you want to make sure that your case fits your motherboard. So it should say on it when you buy it, ATX motherboard or micro ATX motherboard. The same goes for power supply as well, I think. I think they come in 2 different sizes. I'm not quite sure though, but look it up. Right, so when you have all of the parts and they've all been delivered, that's when you're going to want to start building it. And I've done a little documentation of my build, so I'm going to talk you through it. Okay, so the first step for me was to clean out my old PC case. And I've had this for 10 years, and I'm not joking. The amount of dust on this case. I wish I'd have took a photo of it before, but it was so bad. Like, I have a little stick, I'll show it you. I have this little thing, my feather duster, which I used for wiping down all the fans on the case. My little feather duster. So I've been wiping down the fans, but I didn't realise how bad they were getting on the inside of the case. And yeah, it was pretty disgusting. Like, you got to really take the fan off the case in order to clean it properly. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is something that I've only just learnt. And I learnt it the hard way. Don't you do the same thing as me. Right, so when you've cleaned it all out with your feather duster, or whatever you're going to use, I like this feather duster. Right, so the next step is to attach the processor to your motherboard. And basically the processor just slots right into this little slot on the motherboard. You want to lift up the pin and then just push the processor in. And be careful not to touch any of the pins because it's really delicate stuff. You don't want to get any static electricity or any dust or anything. Just keep it all nice and clean. And then once the processor slides in, push down the pin again to lock it in place. And then you're going to want to attach a little dab of thermal paste. And a lot of these processors come with thermal paste already on the back of the fan. So check if that's the case. And then you basically just put the fan on top of the processor and then that screws down in place. There's also a little processor fan. It's called a CPU fan. And just make sure that's plugged in onto the slot on the motherboard. So there should be a little connection called CPU fan. Plug that in there. And then you can install the RAM. And RAM basically just slots straight in. There's only one way it can go. But on my motherboard it suggested that I use slots 2 and 4 instead of 1 and 3 first. Basically all you do is unclip the side things from the RAM slots. And then push your RAM in. And you just push down gently on either side of the RAM until it clicks in place. And it should automatically clip the side clips back up. And that locks it into place. Once those two things are installed on the motherboard, you want to put the motherboard into your case. Once it's all in place, you basically just screw the motherboard into the case. This is where the size of the motherboard comes into play, because if you get an ATX motherboard, then the holes in the case will be the ATX size. So them holes line up for the screws. Next thing you're going to want to install is the power supply. This basically just slots straight into the slot for the power supply in your case. There's like a little dedicated place for it. It's usually near the top. And all you do is unscrew the back panel and then push it right up against it. And then you screw the screws back into the case, but they also go into the back of the power supply as well. The next thing I did was connect all of the case fans. So on my case, they basically just clip straight into the case, but you probably need to screw them in. And then I attached the Ssd Drive, which basically just slots into one of these slots in your case. I think it's a 3.5 inch slot in the case. And then once that's in, you're going to want to slide in the hard drive. Now I've gone for an SSD drive like I stated in the previous video. So what I needed to buy for this case was a 2.5 inch to 3.5 inch bracket. So basically I only have 3.5 inch slots in my case and I needed a 2.5 inch one. So I bought this little bracket and the SSD drive fits nicely into the 2.5 one, but then it has a wider base which fits into the 3.5. So I screw it all in and it's all nice and secure. You're going to want to put the graphics card in, and basically this again just slots into the PCIe slot. So there should be a few slots on your motherboard. PCIe times 16 is the one that most graphics cards use. So all you do here is take off the panel where you want the video adapter stuff to be, at the back of your PC. Just make sure there's nothing blocking it there. And then you want to slide it into the PCIe slot and then screw it into place on the panel. And again, the little clip on the PCI Express slot should just clip back into place, holding it nice and firmly in place. If your graphics card has a power slot on top of the graphics card, then you're going to want to plug in one of the power adapters from the power supply into the back of the graphics card. And while you're there, you want to plug in the computer power as well. So on the motherboard, there should be a space for computer power. Just plug in one of them there. It's usually a 6 or an 8 hole connection. And with your power supply as well, there should be a big connection that has like 12 or 14 pins, I think it is. Plug that into the big connection on the motherboard, and that's the power for the motherboard. And while we're at it, let's connect all of the other stuff as well. So you want one of the SATA connections from the power supply into the back of your hard drive, and also into the back of the CD drive as well. The next stage is the tricky stage, and you're going to want to read your motherboard's manual here, because this can get a little bit technical. Like basically all of the stuff from your case, all the wires from your case need connecting to the motherboard. So there's going to be a connection for the power LED, the reset switch, and the computer speaker. There's like an onboard speaker, like when you hear the beep when you start up a PC, that needs connecting as well. And also all of the USB connections of your case need connecting as well to the motherboard. It can be a little bit tricky, but just keep with it and just find the right place. It looks more daunting than it actually is. Another thing to note here is just make sure that the plus and negative are the right way round, because you don't want to mess them up. Right, next thing we want to do is attach the hard drive and the CD drive to your motherboard. And this uses a little SATA lead. And it should look similar to that, if you can see it. And you basically just connect this into the back of each of your devices, your hard drive and your CD drive, and then the other side attaches into the motherboard. There should be SATA slots on the motherboard. Right, and then the last stage is to connect all of the fans. So there should be slots on the motherboard for case fans as well. I think it's called system fans or sysfan. You just connect them into the motherboard, and then you want to connect the power for each of the fans to the power supply as well. And that's basically it. You just close your PC case, and then you turn it on and you hope for the best. Make sure if it's a brand new PC that you have the CD that comes with the motherboard into your CD drive when you start it up, because then it'll load in all of the drivers and stuff. And also make sure you have everything connected at the back, like your monitors and your mouse and your keyboard and things. Right, now that that's explained, I think I'll talk you through the PC that I've just built and all of the stats and stuff. This is where it gets really geeky, so if you're not a geek, you can go away and do something else. Right, so as I explained, I basically just used my old case, so I didn't buy a new case. I'm quite happy with the one I've got. It's a Thermaltake Armour one. There's loads of space for everything inside, and it's like super cool. It has massive fans and everything, so I just thought I'm going to use the same case. No point in buying a new one. The SSD drive, I think I've spoken about this before. It's a 1TB SSD drive. The motherboard is a B450. Hang on, let me look it up. The motherboard is an MSI B450 Gaming Plus Max motherboard, and it's ATX size. The processor is AMD Ryzen 5 3600 processor. That has 6 cores, and it can be overclocked to 4.2 GHz. And I don't personally do overclocking because I don't really trust my own abilities of overclocking. The RAM that I've got with it is 2 sticks of 8GB, so 16GB in total, and that's Corsair Vengeance LPX. The power supply that I've got is 850 watts, which is a lot more than I need. And the graphics card is Nvidia GeForce GTX 1650 Super Ventus XSOC. That's a lot to take in. And yeah, there you go. That's my new PC. Hopefully it'll last me another 10 years like the last one. We'll have to find a space for all of these old parts now. What do I do with these? Anyway, that's it. If this has helped in any way, click like and subscribe. And if you have any questions about custom PC building or anything, let me know in the comments below, and I'll do my best to help. If I don't know, then I'll tell you I don't know. I'm not gonna lie. And with that, I'll see you next time. If you're new here, click that subscribe button and click like button as well. Anyway, thanks for watching. See you next time.